This is a dueling pistol. To load it, you pour a measure of gunpowder here, down the barrel. Then you tamp in a wad of cotton, followed by the bullet. You open this little compartment here and add a dash more gunpowder. This is what sets the whole thing off. You cock this hammer so that when you pull the trigger, the hammer hits a flint, the spark flies, and bang! Thank you for coming at this late hour. I need to be heard. Duels. A disgusting poison left over from a barbaric period. They have no place in our new century. Nevertheless, I have agreed that at daybreak, I will step into a small boat to be rowed across the Hudson River. When will that be? In about an hour? Yes. I will take with me this pistol. When we reach the New Jersey shore, we will climb a path that leads to a shelf above the river. There I will face the Vice President of the United States on what is ridiculously called the Field of Honor. His name is Aaron Burr. He hates me, and I despise him. How does one feel on the night before a duel? Could it be like the night before fighting a battle in the war? I spent the whole Revolutionary War longing for the battlefield. General Washington kept me at headquarters. He insisted that I was more important helping him run the war than to actually fight the war. But I knew that if I did not see real action, I would regret it for the rest of my life. Finally, he let me go. Yorktown, the battle that would decide everything. Either King George would remain our absolute monarch, or the American colonies would become the United States of America. I commanded a regiment of infantry. My men and I knew that some of us would be killed, but our hearts were light. Freedom. Freedom. What better cause to die for? My mission? Take out the British cannons that were raining death down on our army. Our plans were laid. My men filed into the trench closest to the deadly guns. We fixed bayonets to our rifles. Just after dark, we heard the signal. Let's go! We surged out and raced across no man's land. The cannons roared, a few of us fell, but we crossed the ground in less than a minute. Then over a little picket fence, up an embankment, and down into the redoubt, where the redcoats could not believe we were on top of them so fast. Now we fought hand to hand. In 5 minutes, we took 70 prisoners. The cannons were ours and would never again fire on our troops. There was no stopping us now. The British defense began to collapse. Their general had to surrender. What a proud night to remember. Tonight there is no pride. I'm playing out an idiot's game. There will be no winner. If I die, it will be for nothing. So what does a man do in the hours before his duel? He prays for something or other. I have done that. He writes to his wife and children, reminding them of his eternal love. Done. He writes to his loyal comrades, reminding them to keep working for their cause. Done. He writes to those to whom he owes money. Done. But what about his other debts? I mean, debts of gratitude owed to those no longer here. Debts of love never acknowledged. That is why you are here. To witness my unpayable debts. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be mysterious. There are things that I have never told anyone in America, only my dear wife and my son. I am not by nature secretive, but my whole life, well, let me just dive in. I was born on the island of Nevis. Where is that? A speck of land in the middle of the Caribbean. I came into this world and my parents were not married. So what does that make me? A bastard. Go ahead, smirk and giggle. It's ridiculous that such a fact means anything at all. Are all men created equal? Are we endowed by our Creator with unalienable rights, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness? That's what Thomas Jefferson wrote. But Jefferson and many others who signed the Declaration of Independence didn't mean what they said. Somehow all men failed to include Africans, failed to include Indians or Jews, and it failed to include bastards. We who were born Africans, Indians, Jews, and bastards are not meant to rise in the world. We are not meant to develop our brains and our natural skills. We are meant to slave away at the very bottom of society, which is where I was supposed to remain. I never told the truth about my origins. I became a master of ways to not say a word about my parents. Until tonight. You're about to hear things that I have locked in my heart for 32 years. My mother, I can't tell you how it feels to begin a sentence with those words after all these years. My mother, her name was Rachel. At 16, she was trapped in a wicked marriage. Her husband wasted her dowry on himself. He beat her. He forbade her to read her books. He took a mistress. So she ran away. And for that, Rachel was branded the criminal. She fell in love with my father. Her husband had started another family but refused her a divorce. Therefore I, bastard. Therefore I not allowed into the school in Nevis. Bastard blacks and Jews need not apply. But down the street lived a wise old Jewish woman who taught the Jewish children of Nevis. Christian families avoided her like the plague, but not my mother. An early memory. Standing on a table next to Mrs. Dorita, reciting the 10 Commandments in Hebrew to an amused crowd. I felt so accepted. From that day, I have revered the Jewish people. My mother judged people only by their hearts and their actions. This held true for Africans. When we could afford domestic help, she never gave orders. She talked woman to woman, to people solving the daily problems of the household. She told me, they are just as skillful, intelligent, thoughtful as any white woman. She told me, it's a crime against the Almighty to make them slaves. Rachel was the owner of 34 books. More than anyone else I knew. Shakespeare, Alexander Pope, Plutarch's Lives of the Greeks and Romans. Great language, great stories of great men. She read to me every day. One day I asked her, why are there no great men today like Cato and Pericles? She said, there will be soon, my son. And you can be one of them. You will be one of them. Father went away when I was 11. He dreamed of making money on other islands and sending it to us. But money never came. He was a dreamy man whose dreams all turned to dust. Mother had cousins who helped us start a little store. We lived upstairs. We got by all right. She taught me how to keep the accounts. I loved working with numbers. But soon a tropical fever swept over the island. I caught it and gave it to her. Sweat, vomiting, diarrhea, delirium. I woke up in the dark of night and she was lying next to me. Dead. Everything good about me has its roots in her. Because Rachel was a fallen woman, the church refused her burial. We laid her to rest in the country under a mahogany tree. Well, first a bastard, now an orphan, stranded in a colony so backward that I was mocked by the respectable white people. I had to read my books in secret. But yes, everywhere on earth there are good men to be found. And I have always found them. Kruger, Mr. Nicholas Kruger, the biggest importer on the island. He supplied my mother's shop. I was a spindly, wretched, 13-year-old orphan, never gone to school. Yet he hired me as a clerk. I vowed that he would never be sorry. You must understand the complexity of importing goods to the tiny islands of the Caribbean. The islands grow only sugar, produced by African slaves, and the slaves produce more slaves who are sold to America. Children are ripped from their mothers, chained together, herded onto ships bound for Charleston, where they are put in the auction block and sold to the highest bidder. Mother had taught me to hate everything about the slave trade, and yet it was the slaves and the sugar they produced that made the money to buy the goods that paid my wages. So I too become involved in the abomination. If the society is evil, it is impossible not to be accomplice to the evil. My job as a clerk is to manage money. To set our prices, we have to juggle the currency of England, Spain, France, Denmark, and the Netherlands, which are constantly changing value. With my head for numbers, I master this task. Kruger soon gives me amazing responsibilities. He teaches me, without trade, civilization comes to a stop. Without money, trade comes to a stop. Without trust, money is worthless. Without character, a man cannot be trusted. Therefore, without men of character, it all comes crashing down. Trust, money, trade, and civilization itself. Kaboom! The life of man turns nasty, brutish, and short. Nicholas Kruger was a man of character. When he trusted me to become one, he taught me everything about his business. By the time I was 18, I was ready to take over the management of his company. One day he called me into his office. "Alex, I'm going to have to let you go." Thunderstruck. First father left, then mother died, now this. I can't say a word. But he puts an arm around me and says, "I'm sending you to America. This island is too small for a man of your talents. I'll pay your passage. I'll give you letters of introduction. I'll send you money until you finish your education. And I will miss you." 3 months later, I step off the ship in Boston Harbor. The city is buzzing with the energy of revolution. The famous Boston Tea Party will take place in just a few weeks. But at the time, I know nothing about politics. I head for New York to begin my formal education. I enter King's College, which is now Columbia. I love my studies. And I soon learned to love the cause of freedom. Freedom from the very king whose college I attend. I join the Sons of Liberty. I begin to speak out. I enter the New York militia. I study military strategy and become captain of an artillery company. 1 month after the Declaration of Independence, I'm fighting in the Battle of Brooklyn Heights. The Redcoats set a trap for General Washington. If they catch him, who knows? We might lose the war right now. My men and I provide cover for Washington to escape. He likes what he sees in me. He takes me into his inner circle. I'm 21 years old. George Washington, another man of character. It has been written that an army marches on its stomach. But in fact, a modern army marches on borrowed money. To keep the revolution alive, we had to borrow and borrow and borrow. When I ask our leaders how we'll pay back the money, their answer is always the same. We'll worry about that later. But Kruger has taught me, plan ahead, worry now. I see that when the war is won, without a plan, without a central bank of the United States, the former colonies will not have the character to pay their debts. The trust in government will disappear. Money will become worthless. And our American civilization will wither on the vine of private greed. I persuade Washington that I'm right. 10 years later, he will appoint me our first Secretary of the Treasury. The general and I also find time to talk about slavery. His family owned slaves for generations. But Washington had come to see that his country will never grow into greatness as long as one human being can own another. Unlike me, he is not willing to become an outright abolitionist. I said, but General, even slave owners like Jefferson and Madison admit it's wrong, yet they make no plans to end it. Nothing. It's always the problem that will be solved later. Jefferson and Madison are like compulsive gamblers. They know they're on the road to ruin. They vowed to stop, but they keep on gambling. And they are losing our very future. He said, "You are a passionate young man, Colonel Hamilton, and I respect that, but it's too soon. Nothing will persuade the South to free their slaves." Then you are condemning the United States to a savage future. I'm not condemning anyone, young man. I am just telling you the truth. And so we agree. After the war, we'll work together to put our new nation on a sound financial footing, with a national bank and a federal government can be trusted to pay its debts. We agreed to disagree about the slavery. There is a story about these two problems, slavery and the Bank of the United States, which I have never told anyone. It's 1790. Washington is our first president. I'm the Secretary of the Treasury. The war has been over for 7 years, and exactly as I predicted, our debts have not been paid. Not to the men who loaned us the money, not to the soldiers who fought the war and were never paid, not their widows, not their orphans. The money, of course, is owed by the separate states, because the United States itself didn't even exist when the money was borrowed. But the state politicians lack character. They are afraid to raise taxes. Their jobs matter more than justice. There's rumbling among the veterans of another revolution. Washington and I have proposed a law to establish the bank, pay the debts, then collect from the states over time. But the South is terrified of a strong central government, terrified of a move to end slavery, as indeed it must. I talk to everyone. In private, many tell me that I'm right, but they won't say so in public. And James Madison, the Speaker of the House, won't even let it come to a vote. I'm on the edge of despair. One morning in the spring of 1790, I'm waiting to see President Washington when who should walk into the room but Thomas Jefferson. He had been our ambassador to France. He was in Paris when we wrote the Constitution. He had just returned to become our first Secretary of State. I needed to know his stance on the issue before us. Good morning, Secretary Jefferson. Welcome home, sir. Thank you, Secretary Hamilton. A truly fine morning to you. He flashes me his charming smile and says, I've heard that you and Speaker Madison disagree about some banking bill. You two had worked together so well on the Constitution, it pains me to see you as enemies. So it crossed my mind that it might help if you two came to dinner at my place. We could talk it over, just the three of us, in private. I say, Speaker Madison has recently changed his view regarding a federal government. I doubt he would enjoy my company just now. Oh, let me worry about that. Shall we say June 10th? And so I go to dine with Thomas Jefferson and James Madison. Madison is a tiny, frail man, too weak to fight in the Revolution. But his intellectual power is ferocious. Jefferson was right. 3 years earlier, we had worked side by side to write and pass the Constitution. We saw eye to eye. America needs a strong central bank to assume the debts of the last war. We need a national armed force to be ready for the next war. He agreed, in writing. But suddenly a complete about-face. No central bank. The only rights are states' rights. We should not even have a national military. I was furious. He knows that I hold him a traitor to our cause. But the meal Jefferson serves is magnificent. Fat oysters, lobsters, quail for starters, 8 kinds of wine brought back from France, all served by a beautiful slave, a girl of about 17. Jefferson ignores the tension between Madison and me. Over the lamb chops, he listens intently as we each present our side of the case for and against the bank. Then he wipes the corner of his mouth and says, well, I can see merit in both your positions. I always find it important in such disputes that each side comes away with something. What would you say, Colonel Hamilton, if the Speaker were to stop blocking your central bank? Would you agree to his proposal to locate our national capital in the state of Virginia? I would say that our capital should be near the center of commerce, New York, Philadelphia. But I believe that without a national bank, the states will never pay our debts. And that will provoke a second revolution. So yes, I would accept the exchange. And what would you say, James, to my idea? Madison looked like a man with a stomachache. He said he cannot vote for the bank himself, but he will schedule a vote on my bill if and only if I agree to building the nation's capital in the South. And that, in a nutshell, is that. the nation is saved. The beautiful slave brings us French cognac, and I feel emboldened to broach another subject. Secretary Jefferson, some years ago you published an important book called Notes on the State of Virginia. I wonder if I might have the honor of asking you about that book. He pauses and glances up at the girl who has just set the carafe of cognac on the table. Sally, go finish up in the kitchen, then take yourself to bed. She glances at me searchingly, then turns and enters the unlit room behind her owner. She stops in the shadow where the others cannot see her, though I can. Please, he says, ask your question. Sir, in your book, you write that African people are fundamentally inferior to Europeans, that they are incapable of complex thoughts like learning the laws of geometry and musical harmony, that they are less beautiful than Europeans, and are not capable of appreciating the finer side of civilization. For these reasons, you say that Africans can never be full citizens of our nation. You propose that they should all be deported to Africa, where they will not mix their blood with Europeans or extract revenge for their centuries of suffering slavery here. My question is, in the last 5 years, have you found cause to reconsider these views, which seem at odds with your Declaration of Independence? It takes him a moment to compose himself. I realize that if Jefferson were a dueling man, this might lead to his challenging me. But Jefferson is not a dueling man. No, sir, he says. I have found no cause to change those views. In the dark room behind him, Sally turns toward the kitchen. Thank you, sir, I say. This has been a most productive and interesting evening. I feel a shudder go down my spine. Slavery will not end in the lifetime of Thomas Jefferson. But my financial plan goes forward. Our country will pay its debts, except for those we owe to our people of color. Now I can talk about Aaron Burr. In the early years, I liked him. Such a keen wit. We both practiced law in New York. Sometimes we worked together. He agreed. A great country needs a strong central government, strong currency, and vast amounts of credit to build roads, canals, harbors, and so forth. So I thought that he would march with me in our struggle to create the conditions of greatness for our people. I thought that he was a man of character, and I needed his help. Well, the governor of New York was not a man of character. George Clinton. Like so many state politicians, he hated the federal government. He made himself the corrupt monarch of New York, and to heck with the rest of the states. Burr agreed. The man must be defeated. Burr worked with me in the election of 1792. But Clinton won anyway. He rigged the election. So what does Burr do? He goes straight to Clinton, congratulates him on his victory, then persuades Clinton to choose as his Attorney General a man by the name of Aaron Burr. Clinton is only too glad to welcome him to the fold of corruption. Clinton and Burr, birds of a feather, two men who have no passion to serve the Commonwealth, two men who change their loyalty with every change in the weather. I see that Burr will not be satisfied until he is elected President of the United States. I will spare you the litany of all the backstabbing I had to endure for the next 8 years. Then, in 1800, Burr runs for president. Jefferson also runs for president. When the dust clears, they both have the same number of votes in the Electoral College. The rule was that in the event of a tie, the House of Representatives would choose. Will it be Jefferson or will it be Burr? One will be president, the other vice president. This, of course, opens the gate onto a bloody field of political deal-making. The prize for which he has plotted so long is now just one step away. What a satanic choice for me. One man has principles that are horribly wrong and will work to undo all my work if he's elected. The other has no principles at all. I swallow my bile and use my influence to get Jefferson elected, which makes Burr his vice president. Burr hates the job. No power, no influence. It's all my fault, of course, so he hates me more than ever. His popularity goes down the sewer. I think I'm done with him. But no. This year, while still vice president, he decides to run for governor of New York. Will I never be done with this man? I feel personally abused. I simply want him out of our public life, and so I behave in a way that I now see was inexcusable. Not only inexcusable, but also stupid. Unfortunately, the stupid things I said were also true. I was at some gathering or other among friends, and I spoke all too clearly my opinion of the character of Aaron Burr. A few days later, he was not elected governor of New York. And a few days after that, a small newspaper reported that I had said Aaron Burr is despicable. Despicable. I truly don't recall using that word. Nevertheless, that is my opinion. Despicable. Well, someone clips the article and sends it to Burr. Already miserable over losing the election, that article sends him over the edge. Despicable. Legally, there's nothing he can do. I was exercising my right of free speech. So he goes outside the law. He resorts to what men call honor. He writes me this letter. Blah, blah, blah. You might perceive, sir, the necessity of a prompt and unqualified acknowledgement or denial of any expressions which could warrant the assertions of the article. Necessity of a prompt reply. In the language of honor, those are code words meaning, I had better publicly disavow the article or else. I had an easy way out. All I had to do was publicly express my regret that the author of the article had misinterpreted whatever it was I said. Burr would have had to swallow that, bitter as it was. Instead, I argued with him. Madness! I made it worse. I was ruled by anger. I can be one stubborn bastard. In this case, the result was he soon had grounds to challenge me according to the code of the duel, which he did, and I accepted. But why? Why? Why indeed? Why? Here I must introduce my son, Philip Hamilton. 3 years ago, he was a young man of 19, full of fire and curiosity, full of character, the mind of a philosopher. He could beat me at chess. He shared my passion for America to become great. When he was little, he couldn't get enough of me telling him how I fought in the Revolution. One night, 3 years ago, he and a friend went to the theater. When he came home, I was still working. What's wrong, son? What? Nothing's wrong. You can't deceive me. Come on, out with it. He held back. I waited, thinking he might have fallen in love. I was rehearsing my wise fatherly advice. But at last he said, "There was an enemy of yours at the theater," and he named George Eaker, who had recently given a slanderous speech against me. I said, "For God's sake, Eaker's a nobody, not worth a second of your time." But Philip said, "Eaker made an obscene gesture at me." There were 100 people standing there. They all fell silent and looked at me to see what I would do. Eaker kept the gesture in place and sneered. I asked him if he had something to say to me, and he replied that he had nothing to say to the rascal son of a Creole bastard from the Caribbean. My heart fell. I feared what was coming. I had trained myself in the art of handling such situations, but I had not trained Philip. So what he did was to demand an apology, which of course Eaker refused to give. And so Philip challenged him to a duel. My anger erupted. "Good grief, Philip! What's wrong with you? We do not believe in duels." He said, "Calm yourself, Papa. Let me explain." Before I challenged him, I looked at the crowd. Lots of our enemies, newspaper writers hostile to our cause. I could see them already relishing what they would publish about my cowardice. I saw myself becoming a laughingstock. "Father, I don't believe in duels. But nevertheless, if you are publicly insulted to your face and you don't respond, then it's a stain on your honor. You will never advance in politics. We know that Jefferson is working night and day to destroy all the progress you brought to the nation. Jefferson's tide is still rising. We have talked about this. In 10 or 20 years, I will be the one who has to turn the tide back in the direction of progress. Papa, I will never be able to do this if I have such disgrace on my record." I said, "You'll be able to do even less if you're dead." He said, "I just happen to be aware of that little fact." Philip could always make me laugh. He said, "Remember, Father, most duels end with no one getting hurt. I won't shoot at Eaker, he won't shoot at me. We'll each go home with our honor intact. That's what will happen." He was right in saying that most duels end without bloodshed, and he himself had calculated the risk and thought it worth taking, not unlike the risk I took at Yorktown. So Philip went to his interview and was shot and died the next day in horrible agony. This game of life has become absurd. My mother could not marry my father. Because of that, one thing followed another, and 50 years later, my son. In so the progress of American civilization is set back, perhaps. How many years? Who can calculate? And here I stand an hour before my own interview, facing the same odds that Philip faced. I will not shoot Aaron Burr. If he shoots me after I discharge my own weapon into the air, he will be dead in American society. He knows that. Philip went to his duel to defend my honor. Do I go to mine to defend his? I don't know. I don't know what my honor is anymore. I don't know if I am still a man of character. Meanwhile, the sky is turning gray in the east. It is time for me to walk down to the wharf and meet Judge Pendleton, my second, and our friend, Dr. Hossack. We will step into the small boat that Pendleton has hired. We will be rowed across the dark river. I thank you for hearing me on this night of nights. Be true to the great spirit of our poor country. Farewell.